Good morning, everybody. How you doing? So really excited to be here. I've got a really exciting topic for you today, VMware Cloud on AWS. So we'll be diving into it, talking about what the service is, how it works, the use cases, what we see customers using it for, and how you can start taking advantage of it and trying it out. So let's dive right in. So VMware Cloud on AWS, we feel, is a truly compelling and differentiated solution. It takes the best of both worlds, the leader in on-premises data centers, VMware, with the leader in public cloud, AWS, us working together to provide a jointly engineered solution. As you'll see, this is not some high-level marketing type thing. We have deep engineering integration on both sides, tons of work, right? Thousands of engineers working together produce a really powerful solution that you can use to accelerate your journey to hybrid cloud. And talking about hybrid cloud, what we've seen very clearly now is that there is this real hybrid approach taking place. Customers have workloads on premises. They want to move to the public cloud, and they're trying to figure out how to go and do that. The reality, if you've tried it before, is that there are a lot of challenges there. But the opportunity is huge with it. And because of that, and because of the benefits that VMware Cloud on AWS can offer, we're seeing tremendous interest. Now, this is a service that's only a couple of years old, not even quite that. But when we did a recent survey, what we found is that 64% of the folks we talked to already had plans to use VMware Cloud and AWS within the next half year to year. Right? Again, for a service that's barely 2 years old, that's tremendous to see that level of engagement and excitement. And there's a lot of work to do here, right? If we look at all the different workloads running in on-premise data centers today, the number is somewhere in the order of 70 million, right? So a huge number of workloads. And again, customers are wanting to move to the cloud, trying to figure out how to do it. And the bottom line is trying to rewrite all these workloads, 70 million of them. It's going to take forever. So there needs to be a simpler solution. And this is exactly what VMware Cloud on AWS can help with. Now, let's talk about the challenges of moving to hybrid cloud. First of all, let's define hybrid cloud, actually. What is hybrid cloud? So when we talk about hybrid cloud, we're really talking about leveraging both your on-premises data center and a public cloud. And when you start looking at these two environments, what you find is that they're oftentimes very different. The APIs are different. The services are different. The tooling is different. The expertise that you need is different. There's this lack of consistency. And so that creates a lot of challenges, right? Because when you don't have consistency, it means that things like tooling need to be separate. You need to have one set of tools for your on-premises environment and another set for your public cloud environment. The training that goes along with that as well, right? You may need two different teams to do this. And we're seeing a lot of this today with customers who are trying to move to the public cloud. They're just getting that effort started. Maybe they've moved some workloads, but they don't really have operational maturity there. Right? And so, you ask them, hey, are you comfortable if one of those apps up there goes down at 2 in the morning, are you able to handle that? And a lot of them say they can't, right? They worry about that sort of situation. Moreover, when you look at it, these types of things around governance or control, a lot of organizations have figured that out on premises, but they're still trying to learn how to do that in the cloud, right? And do you come up with two different solutions for that, or can you align on a single one? The other one that we talk to customers a lot about is delivering a real enterprise-class SLA. So again, they figured out how to do this on premises. They have sophisticated monitoring technologies. They know how to remediate problems very quickly. Again, the 2 a.m. problem, right? If something goes wrong, how can they go and solve that? And then, of course, there's the applications themselves. As I mentioned, traditionally what you find is while you don't necessarily have to rewrite completely an application to move it from on-prem to the cloud, oftentimes modifications are necessary, if not to the core application, to some of its surrounding tooling. And so these are the challenges that really inhibit broader public cloud adoption, broader journey into this hybrid cloud world. So the question is, how can we actually make that go faster, right? And that's exactly what we're looking at with VMware Cloud on AWS. So putting the challenges aside for a second, let's talk about the use cases. What are customers looking at when they're looking at VMware Cloud on AWS? What do they want to do with it? So we see 4 different use cases. And the first one we really call, in a broad sense, cloud migration. Now, the most popular version of this we see is actually when a customer is ready to be done with the data center altogether, right? They want to get out of that data center business. They want to move everything to the cloud. We see that very frequently within the US and quite frequently within Europe as well. We're starting to see that here, but it's still kind of early days, right? Now, when they look at that sort of problem, again, it's like, how do you move hundreds or thousands of workloads out of your data center? Oftentimes, CIOs have a mandate of saying, hey, we want to move completely from CapEx to OpEx. And so a lot of the infrastructure and operations folks are challenged because the CIOs want this movement to be quick, but there's a lot of work to do there. So how do you really balance both of those? This is where VMware Cloud on AWS can help. Now, other customers aren't necessarily looking to move out of the data center. Instead, what they want to do is augment their data center capacity with some public cloud capacity. And so this is a true kind of continuous hybrid cloud type scenario. And so there's a lot of use cases that we see here, right? Customers who may have seasonal usage. So maybe around the Christmas shopping season, there's a lot of people that want to buy stuff, and so you got to spin up a bunch of additional web instances to support all that additional web traffic. Now, you don't want to build a data center out for peak capacity because of the fact there's a lot of unused capacity most of the time because you're not usually at peak, right? So you can save a lot of money if you actually build your data center for your average utilization and then use fill in the peak with extra resources in the cloud. And so we see a lot of folks doing that. Another good one is disaster recovery. So we see a lot of customers have historically built or used multiple data centers in order to do this. They have an active data center and a backup data center. And that, just in the case, as I mentioned with peak, it's like that backup data center is almost never used, right? Because these DR events are fairly rare. And so what we want to get to is a point where you never have to build a backup data center again. In fact, you can get rid of the ones you already have. The idea being, let's use all the benefits and dynamics of cloud, right? Most of the time, you don't need those resources because your active data center works just fine. But in the case that active data center, something happens to it. It completely loses power. A big storm system hits it, it's out. Well, you can start dynamically spinning up workloads in the cloud very, very quickly, right? And get your applications back online. So our goal is to make sure that none of our customers have to ever build or use a backup data center again. You can use the cloud for that. Finally, next generation applications. Now, this is an interesting one. So we see a tremendous amount of activity happening within the public cloud on AWS. Right? Customers are building all sorts of great applications using the native AWS services. The challenge is those applications usually don't run by themselves, right? They need to interact with existing applications or application components back on premises. And of course, you may have challenges there, right? Like longer latencies, throughput issues, especially if it's a high bandwidth connection. So what we see a lot of customers wanting to do is actually move those on-premises workloads into the cloud so they can be co-resident with the new applications, right? And have very high bandwidth, very low latency connectivity. So these are just a few of the different examples. But as you can see here, there's a bunch of different use cases that customers are looking at VMware Cloud and AWS for. And speaking of the last category on the applications front, this is something that we've really been focused as of late, making sure that we can support all your business critical applications. So again, customers are doing all sorts of great innovative things in the cloud on AWS. But then again, you still have all your existing systems, with these types of products that you see on the screen, right? And so how can you take advantage of moving those as well? Because these things have really stringent requirements around performance, security, many other things, right? So we're doing a bunch of work we actually have done a bunch of work to certify each of these on VMware Cloud and AWS. And you can see some of the details here. I'll be getting into some more details on each of these different ones here in a little while, but just to give you a sense of it, this is a core focus area for us. So whatever applications you have, we can support them on VMware Cloud and AWS, right? That's really the point here. Just like on your on-premises data center, any workload that runs there, you can run that workload in confidence in the cloud with VMware Cloud and AWS. Okay, so these are all kind of general use cases. Let's talk about some specific customers. So we have a lot of different customers we talk to here, but there's a few stories. So we have one customer, PHH Mortgage. Now, they actually are a DR type use case. And again, they had a physical data center on contract that was coming up for renewal. And their CIO had a mandate they needed to get out of that data center. Now, how are they going to do that, right? Again, they have hundreds of applications that they need to be able to move out to support a DR use case for. So what we did was we actually worked with them, and we're really hands-on with them to architect this system so they could stand up VMware Cloud and AWS in the cloud, and then be able to use different tooling like HCX, which I'll talk about in a little while, to migrate all those workloads into the cloud in literally just a handful of days. So typically speaking, as I said, when you think about VM or workload migration to the cloud, you're talking about weeks to months, sometimes longer. Here you can do it literally in a matter of days. It's literally a point-and-click, migration wizard type exercise. So a really great outcome for PHAs. They're able to move things much quicker than they had thought, and they were able to get out of that colo space, the DR space, before their contract renewed. Another example is Playtika. So this is a gaming company. Have a lot of different types of games, mobile games and so forth, a lot of users, right? Now, obviously, they're really focused on continually doing dev and test. And what they found is that the dev and test group was getting bigger, their production systems were getting bigger, they were maxing out their data center. Now, unlike the previous example, PHH, they didn't want to get rid of their data centers. They wanted to keep them, right? So this is really a data center expansion use case. So what they did is they said, hey, I want to move all my dev test into the cloud, keep my production workloads on premises. The idea being I can move my dev test out. That'll give more room on-prem for all my production workloads as they're continuing to grow, right? So similar type of scenario here. We help them work through the migration strategy. Again, using a simple tool that we call HCX, they were able to migrate hundreds of workloads in, again, just a matter of a few days, right? Basically one business week, essentially. So another great example of the type of simplicity that you can find here. Things that used to take months or even years in some cases now can take just days. The final example is a customer called Stagecoach. They're based in the UK, transportation company. You can see their buses going all around London and everywhere else if you're ever out in the UK. Now, they had a workload that had really stringent availability requirements. And what they did was they had some stuff on-prem, really expensive hardware to try and drive great availability for this workload. But there are a number of problems there, and they wanted to expand it and do a few other things, move it into the cloud. In order to properly re-architect the application to make it all distributed and stuff would have taken forever to do that rewrite. So instead what we did was partnered with them on a really innovative technology we have called stretch clusters. Now a stretch cluster is essentially a vSphere cluster, a set of ESX hosts, which spans two different AWS AZs within a given AWS region. The idea there is that if one of the AZs happens to go down for some reason, the other AZ will still be running. And all of our natural technologies, things like HA, can kick in to restart the workloads that were on the failed AZ in the good AZ. And so because of this, we can actually deliver, from an infrastructure perspective, 4 nines of availability. Right? And if you deal with this sort of stuff, you know that availability is hard, right? Especially 4 nines. But we're able to do this from an infrastructure perspective. That means that all the applications running on top of that infrastructure automatically get that baseline of 4 nines availability as well. And so we were able to enable them to get high availability on this application without drastic rewrite and do it much, much faster than they had thought. So again, this is actually, stretch clusters is really one of these really interesting examples where we take, this innovative technology from VMware and innovative technology from AWS to create, kind of a best of both worlds, or a 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario, right? Doing better than either of us could have done alone. So again, kind of summary and some of the unique benefits here. We look at on-premises, you look at the cloud, and traditionally, again, large migration times between the two. But because of the compatible infrastructure layer, and because of the tools that we have at hand, things like vMotion, you can actually live migrate a workload from on-premises to the cloud, or vice versa, without any downtime or disruption for that workload, right? Incredible. All the different AWS services that you have, or workloads that you've deployed within native AWS environments, can now be accessible to those applications you move to the cloud with VMware Cloud and AWS, right? Low latency, high bandwidth, as we talked about. You can use all the existing tooling. So many of you who have vSphere environments have robust ecosystems of tools built around there, things for monitoring, things for security, things for compliance. You can now use all those same tools on this Sddc in the cloud, just like you can on premises. There's a bunch of other kind of licensing things I'll talk about here in a minute. But the final one is that VMware has got a very broad range of application and operating system support. That's something that we've really been focused on for the past 20 years, right? And the great thing about this partnership is it allows us to support all those same workloads in the cloud. So again, we know a lot of people have legacy systems. We have people, some of our retail customers, for instance, have insanely old systems that they still use to drive their business. And they want to fix that, but it takes time. And this allows them to move forward into the cloud to get some of those cloud benefits without doing all those drastic rewrites, which can take a long time. So we talked about 3 customers. There are tons of customers across all verticals and industry segments. And across all application types as well. We showed some of the bigger database type workloads, but there's pretty much any application can run on VMware Cloud and AWS just like it does on premises, right? Okay, so let's get into a bit more of the specifics as to what this thing actually is. What is VMware Cloud on AWS? So let's start, a bunch of different pieces of this diagram here. Let's start with the middle piece, the VMware Cloud and AWS piece. What this is what we call our software-defined data center capabilities, so SDDC, compute storage network, in particular vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, deployed onto AWS's bare metal systems. So this is something that AWS and us work together on to innovate, right? They create a bare metal system, which they had never really done before, right? They had never let anyone outside of themselves run on bare metal within their environments. And now, of course, they turn this into a publicly accessible service. So really cool stuff. What this means is that there's no sort of nested virtualization. There's no sort of overheads. This is vSphere on bare metal, just like you have it on premises, right? Which again means the same sort of compatibility, same sort of application support, same sort of performance, just like you have on-prem. Now, one of the really cool things is that because vSphere is here, and vCenter in particular, it means we can connect back with your vCenter on premises. There's a technology we have called hybrid link mode. And what this enables you to do is to have a single pane of glass view into all your SDDCs, both the ones that run in the cloud as well as the ones that run on premises. So you can easily vMotion workloads back and forth. You can share templates. You can replicate data, right? It's the interfaces you already know and use that now can manage both these environments together. Not only that, but any sort of higher level tooling you use, things like vRealize operations, vRealize automation, third-party tools. This SDDC in the cloud is just another SDDC, right? To them, it looks just the same as an on-premises one, so they can manage it just the same. And that's the real power of this solution. Now, I've also said the other great benefit about this is that these workloads running on the SDDC are now close to the AWS services and your workloads running in EC2. We do this really cool kind of cross ENI connection, cross VPC connection that allows you to get really low latency, really high bandwidth connectivity to these things from the applications running in your SDDC, right? So it makes a lot of sense, allows you to start taking advantage of those great AWS services from things running within your VMware SDDC environment. Now, kind of a double click on that one. Again, we use the latest bits of all of our SDDC software. So one of the really interesting things here is that we are releasing updates to VMware Cloud and AWS faster than we do on premises. We do major updates about every 3 months, and as opposed to on-prem where it's every maybe year to year and a half, give or take. So you're constantly getting new functionality, right? And really, really powerful stuff. And of course, all the great features and functionality of the SDDC that you know and love and probably use every day are here as well. Things like DRS and HA. We talked about vSAN. We talked about all the power of NSX. So NSX is there. You can take advantage of it with VMware Cloud on AWS. Now, you don't actually need NSX on-prem. If you have NSX on-prem, that's great. We can connect those two up. Everything works. You can even vMotion a VM, maintain its IP address, that sort of stuff, right? Really powerful things. But you don't have to have it. The other thing that's really cool is that you can dynamically add additional hosts to these clusters, right? So, you have an SDDC, start out with 3 or 4 nodes. You can add more nodes as you see fit. Again, same sort of cloud dynamics. Probably the biggest difference, the fundamental difference between VMware Cloud and AWS and your on-premises environment is the fact that VMware Cloud and AWS is actually operated by VMware. So our engineers, the people who write the code, are no longer just writing code, they're actually ensuring that your infrastructure is running properly in production on VMware Cloud on AWS, right? So we handle provisioning for you. You no longer have to figure out how to deploy all the different bits of the SDDC, how to make sure all the versions match and all the best practices and so on and so forth, compatible hardware. We take care of all of that. That's literally just an API call now. You call an API, you push a button in the UI, in about 90 minutes, you'll have a new SDDC, fully automated. No humans in the loop on our side, right? We automate all that. In addition, once it's out there, we then start monitoring it. So we're very proactive. We have a whole team, actually most of our engineering team that get automated alerts when we determine there to be problems. So you don't need to log in to fix an issue with vCenter if it goes down or has some other issue. We're on that. We fix things proactively. And finally, lifecycle management. You never have to deal with another upgrade, right? VMware handles that for you. We just send you a mail when we're doing an upgrade. You, of course, can tell us, give us maintenance windows when you want these things to happen, but we take care of it for you. And again, in an automated fashion. So that's one of the real powerful things here. And as I said, because we are upgrading every 3 months, we take care of all that complexity for you. You don't have to think about it at all. OK, so that's some basics of the service. Now let's talk about what's going on, what's new. So as I said, we do upgrades about every 3 months. So we announced the latest batch of features back in February. And we just started rolling out these upgrades over the past few weeks, maybe past month or so. So very soon, all customers should be upgraded to the latest bits and have the latest great functionality. Now, there's a few different categories we're looking at here, kind of how we can improve the runtime of it, how we can improve security, and then also different things we can do to protect the system. But the first thing I want to talk about is our drive toward global availability. So very much we want to be in every AWS region around the world. Now our strategy has been, let's start small, right? So we started with one region, US West and Oregon, and proved out the technology there. And now we've been very rapidly expanding, with the goal being by the end of the year, being at every region around the world. And so the benefit here is that wherever you have needs, wherever you have workloads within AWS, VMware Cloud on AWS can be there as well. Right? We know that many of the customers here are global entities. Right? You need to have workloads and applications present at all different physical locations around the world. And so VMware Cloud and AWS is committed to being at all those locations. So you can have both your workloads running in your native AWS environment, and right side by side of that, you can have workloads running on your Sddc environment as well. So you can see the list here. I won't go through them, but you can take a picture. Again, we're driving aggressively. Probably the biggest thing I should announce here is obviously that we now have the Singapore region available and ready for use. So highly recommend you check it out. Really great stuff, right? And we have something now that's close, low latency, so you can go take a look at it and start playing with it. OK, so another thing we're looking at doing is really expanding the type of hosts that you can have on this service. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is that our strategy here is to really mimic what EC2 is doing. With EC2, you have the notion of an instance type, right? And so you have a lot of different instance types. Some are focused on maybe compute optimization. Some are optimized for storage. Some are optimized for certain accelerators, right? Like FPGAs or GPUs or these sorts of things. They even have an ARM version now, right? So we want to have that same sort of choice on the VMware Cloud on AWS side as well. We know one size doesn't fit all, so you're going to want different trade-offs. So the initial host that we have is called i3.metal, right? And it's very focused on the hyperconverged architecture. Now that's great. It's super simple, allows customers to very quickly and easily scale up. But some customers told us, hey, we really want to have our storage scale separately from our compute. And we said, well, that makes total sense. So let's go do that. So we announced a new instance type called R5. Now, R5 has no local storage. Instead, the storage is placed on EBS. So another example, similar to stretched clusters, we're taking this great innovation on the VMware side and combining that with the great innovation on the AWS side. In particular here, combining vSAN with EBS. So it's a technology we call elastic vSAN. And the idea there is that that R5 host can now access a set of EBS storage via vSAN. And what you get is greater amounts of storage per host. The i3s give you around 11 or 12 terabytes, and these R5s can give you between 15 and 35 terabytes, right? So a lot more flexibility if you have large storage requirements. Oh, and by the way, this makes a lot of sense for DR as well, because you can really fill up all those terabytes of storage, and then dynamically spin up additional R5 hosts when you do have a DR event. So again, a lot of flexibility, and that's what we're going toward with customers. Now, another use case that customers have asked us for is like, hey, I've got certain software, maybe Oracle is one of them, where they charge you based on how many cores you have. The i3.metal systems have 36 cores per physical host, and maybe you need all those, but maybe you don't. And if you don't need them all, you don't want to be charged for them, right? So we have ways of actually turning off those cores, so the physical host doesn't see them anymore, the VM doesn't see them, Oracle doesn't see them, so you don't need to pay license fees on those things, right? So it gives you, again, an extra level of flexibility here. Now, I've talked a bit about the mission-critical applications earlier, things like HANA and Oracle. We've done a lot of work to support Oracle RAC on top of VMware Cloud on AWS. And the latest one is we want to be able to support Microsoft SQL Server clustering. Now, this one was a little bit harder than Oracle RAC because this actually required more changes in our underlying infrastructure, specifically something around called multi-writer mode. Now, normally this is something we don't really do, or we have to do it in special circumstances, but we really wanted to make sure we could support this use case because we know a lot of customers use it. So now we've implemented that solution. It's there on VMware Cloud and AWS. You can see some of the details there. We support a few different configurations that we think meet a lot of the customer requirements here. So just another example of how we're really expanding VMware Cloud and AWS to really support every workload that you have, such that anything you have on premises, you can very trivially and easily move to the cloud. OK. So HCX. Now, this is a technology I've mentioned a few times. And this is actually a really, really critical technology to enable widespread bulk migrations of workloads from on-premises to the cloud or vice versa. So let me just build this out here, right? So HCX kind of runs in the cloud. And it's a cloud service. And what it does is it connects both to your on-premises environments and to your VMware Cloud and AWS environments. And the idea there is you can then look at all the workloads you have in either location and give HCX instructions on where you want those workloads moved, right? So a lot of customers getting out of the data center, move them all up to the cloud. Some people may want to move some stuff back. But the idea there is it allows you to orchestrate all that. So you create a plan, right? So you say, OK, I've got 1,000 VMs, 1,000 workloads. And you can actually say, hey, I want to move them in different waves. Like maybe I want to move 100 at a time, 100 each day for 10 days, right? That sort of example. HCX allows you to do that. You can also define all sorts of network configuration. Do you want to change the network, or do you want to keep it the same? What do you need to do in terms of after the migration happens? Like sometimes you may want to change servers that workload's talking to. You may have an on-premises version of that server and a cloud version. And when it moves to the cloud, you want to talk to the cloud one so it's not talking back over the pipe to the on-premises one. So we can help you do all that. And again, the notion is you can work through there, simple point-and-click interface to manage all this at scale. Now, the important thing to know about this is that HCX is really just an orchestrator. It calls APIs that are already there in vSphere. So there's no extra HCX agents or anything that are part of the VM or any of that sort of stuff, right? So once that workload's moved, it's running just as normal on the destination site. So really, really cool stuff, really powerful technology. A lot of our customers are using it today to do these bulk migrations. So very well proven technology. Now, HCX is focused on migration. A slightly different use case is DR. The migration use case assumes both sites are running just fine, and you're trying to copy stuff over. DR, of course, is talking about failure scenarios. And those, of course, you can't predict, right, because they can happen pretty much at any time. So we have a product called Site Recovery Manager that you can run on premises. And we also have a service, VMware Site Recovery. Now, the idea here is we want to be able to enable you across a diverse set of SDDCs to protect all these different sites how you see fit, right? And again, our focus here is getting you out of the business of having an on-premises DR environment. Put that in the cloud. So whether it's taking an on-prem data center environment and having a DR site in the cloud, or having another cloud environment and having a DR in a different location, right? You can do all that stuff. So the really cool thing here is that you get tremendous flexibility in terms of where you do your DR and how. We take care of all the replication for you behind the scenes. You can specify all that. There's a ton of configuration there, a ton of things to go play with. But the point is to really give you that flexibility and power. So we have both the DR use case covered as well as the migration use case, because these are, again, very core needs that we see from our customers. So here's another interesting thing. We announced a furthering and evolution of our partnership with AWS back at VMworld in Las Vegas last year. And what we announced was the support for Amazon RDS on vSphere. So we have this kind of interesting model with VMware Cloud and AWS, where the VMware Sddc is running on top of AWS's data centers, right? What we have here is kind of the opposite. Now you have AWS's RDS running on top of VMware's SDDC. And so our partnership really does go both ways like this, right? We want to each support each other's innovation and drive truly great differentiated things together. Now, what's the benefit of this? Well, just like you can move your SDDC workloads to the cloud, you can now start moving your RDS workloads on-prem. Because again, there may be there may be reasons why you want those workloads on-prem, either for latency or different sorts of compliance reasons, data sovereignty, what have you. So now you have that ability to get the same RDS experience on premises on top of vSphere that you have in the cloud. So again, a great proof point about kind of the two-way nature of this partnership and the fact that we're really driving for innovative solutions, both in the public cloud and in the on-prem data center, which is, of course, what we're talking about here with hybrid cloud. Okay, so a lot of really cool stuff. Now, we think the service is out there. We got a bunch of features. We're adding more features as we talked about. The other thing we're really focused on is getting people to try this out and make it as easy as possible. So you can see here a number of different promotions that we've got running. So Direct Connect. One of the really cool things is that we can leverage Direct Connect as part of VMware Cloud on AWS. And so we actually have a free 90-day Direct Connect service for new customers of VMware Cloud on AWS. So it allows you to take advantage of that, especially if you already, a lot of you as AWS customers probably already have this configured. You can take care of that, take advantage of that. Also, we really want people to try out DR, right? I know I sound like a broken record in the sense that I keep talking about wanting you to get out of the DR data center business. Well, give it a try, right? It's super easy. It's easy to get set up. As I said, we can spin you up a new Sddc in just 90 minutes. We can add a new host in just a few minutes after that. So very, very quick, right? It's not like a multi-week type planning exercise. You can do it in a day if you want. And as you do that, you can then take advantage of this free site recovery add-on to protect 200 VMs for up to 90 days, so about 3 months there. And again, that can give you can actually test out failure scenarios, see how things are working, so on and so forth there. And there's a link there to go check it out. Now, there's two other things here at the bottom. So by default, we have the smallest number of sort of the full SDDC is 3 nodes. And we need 3 nodes for vSAN and for other sorts of reasons there. It gives you the full sort of vMotion, HA, vSAN type capabilities. And so we have a deal on that 3 node to give you a 3 node at the cost of 2 nodes. So there's a nice promotion there. Saves you 30% on the whole thing. Pretty awesome. Now, for other customers, they want to even have kind of an even lighter weight way of testing out the service. So we have an option called single node SDDC. So in this option, you literally have one ESX host in your SDDC. Now, this obviously doesn't get you all the great features like vMotion or vSAN because there's only one host, so you can't vMotion something back to itself. But what it gets you is the ability to test out the service, check it out, check out the APIs, check out the UI. What does that flow look like? You can move some applications there. You can see if your tools work. You can point all your tools at this new SDDC. Again, it looks just like any other SDDC on premises. So we have found that single nodes are a great way of sort of testing the waters and figuring out, does this work for you? Testing out that idea and moving, then eventually moving some other workloads. So one thing you could think about doing is trying out the 1 node, right? Super easy to get set up. And if that works, you can then maybe move to a 3 node and even get that second discount we talked about there. So a lot of different options in terms of what you can do here. So that's VMware Cloud and AWS. Now, again, there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening here. Really, this is just the start. As I mentioned, this service isn't even 2 years old yet, right? But we've got tons of customers on it. We're putting out features, all sorts of new capabilities every few months. So it really is time to go and check this thing out. There's a ton of information on the right there. You can take a picture, capture those URLs. But again, us, VMware, and AWS are really here to help you all on your hybrid cloud journey. We look forward to taking that with you. Thank you so much.